is often that people talk about the idea of enlightenment. The whole concept is taught often and frequently, but seldom do people discuss one of the more perilous and trying aspects of seeking enlightenment. And that is the dark night of the soul. At least that is what St. John of the Cross called it in his esoteric works. And he was very well aware of the agony that it had personally cost him, and was looking to tell others how they could overcome this, how they could move beyond this. Now, this is not some terrible, awful thing. This is really something simple and very human, but it occurs because as one of the steps that you must take if you wish to find divine union, you must take that step of detachment. Detachment from all that is of the material world, from everything that is meaningful to you. But what happens when you detach from everything? You can lose yourself, or you can find yourself. And in that state, finding yourself can also be almost scary for some people. In fact, you could say that many people avoid the path of mysticism because of how difficult it is to know oneself. It is not really difficult to know oneself. The paradox is that it is easy, but people find it difficult, want to avoid it, because they do not want to look at their own humanness, their own flaws, their own foibles. They do not want to see their quirks. They would love to think of themselves as being filled with the divine, but they do not want to look within their own person and see the monster that sometimes lurks there. So easier it is to not know the self and not achieve divine union or enlightenment. Yet that is the path that each and every individual is on, and the path that each and every individual will tread, incarnation upon incarnation, until they leave this realm to dwell in the realm of light. And only then will it be that they are safeguarded from the dark night of the soul. And yet, should they even return willingly to guide others back, as did the Buddha or the Christ, what will they experience? They must experience the dark night of the soul. That is because they must again look at their own being. They must again overcome the earthly. You say, oh, but how is it? But once a master is born, once any individual is born into this world, they become fully human. And each and every individual in this world is also fully divine. But that divinity is not recognized. It is often just a seed burning within each individual. And because it is just a seed, it is overshadowed by the very soil and essence of the being. So how will you then overcome? Who suffers the dark night of the soul? Oh, what was that awful dry patch that Mother Teresa suffered? She would pray and yet she felt nothing. That is the dark night of the soul. What was it when Buddha was almost ready to reach enlightenment in the incarnation in which he brought so much light to humanity? That happened. What was it that happened? It was the dark night of the soul when suddenly he saw himself and every beast and demon of the self, and he called upon the earth, and he called for help, and help came, and the darkness was driven away. And even so, he who so many call today Jesus, he stood in the depths of meditation, being tried and tested, with the very lust of humanity, being tested with the very humanness of his being. That is the dark night of the soul, and yet again, he overcame this and was nurtured by the divine beings. So, what happens? How do you overcome this? It is so simple, and yet it is so difficult. You must be able to accept yourself, believe in yourself for what you are, for who you are. You must be willing to look at yourself and know the self, laugh at the self. You must realize that you are unable to take credit or blame for anything that exists. And you must realize at the same time that everything that exists within your life is in essence your doing, and therefore is yours worthy of credit. But if you take credit, the ego will surely take you backwards. And if you take blame, likewise, the ego will grab you and pull you backward. So then you must let go and become detached. But when you become detached, suddenly you are alone. And you feel that you are in the world alone and that you have nothing that is truly yours. You realize that you are on the most lonely and isolated of paths. And the temptation that besets you then is to run back and say, this is mine and this is mine and I am me. And in so possessing everything physical, turn away from the dark night of the soul and turn away from enlightenment, turn away from divine union, turn away from the mystical experience that awaits you. So you can move forward, but what does moving forward mean? Oh, it is when you realize that not possessing anything means that actually you possess all things. How is that? It is simple. You swim in a body of water. You do not possess the water. If you try to hold it, it will run through your fingers. And yet it is all yours to float upon, to swim in, to dive into. It is all yours, but none of it can you hold. You cannot possess it, because if you try to possess it, you will find yourself grabbing for it time and time again, and it possesses you because it occupies all of your time and all of your being. Now you are at the beach where you would have enjoyed yourself, but again and again you grab at the water and you cannot hold it, and you become vexed because it cannot be yours. And yet others simply lay back upon it, and all of it is theirs. So it is when you come to the point that you must let go of all things, when you must become detached from all things, what you must realize in moving forward, a step forward, is that that means all things become yours. Oh, do not mistake what is being said. We are not saying you will not be bound by civil laws as long as you are in such an earthly body. And if someone says, this is mine, or that is mine, you cannot walk up and say, all things are mine, I will take it. No. What is being meant by this is that all of the world, all that is in the world is yours, is at your service. The wind, the earth, the water, fire, the elements, the animals, all of the spirit that flows through the earth is suddenly yours. It flows through you. It is part of you. You can call upon the many spirits that flow about. How is this? It is because you realize now that you are connected at one with all, and being at one with all, you are just as the swimmer who is at one with the ocean, able to float, able to dive, able to swim. And even if you desire, able to leave that ocean. Yes, yes, yes. How do you think it is that enlightened beings, those who some call saints, those who have achieved mystical union, actually function in the world? They function because they are able to leave that ocean of bliss at will. And when they leave that ocean of bliss, that water, it still drips from them. It still sprinkles upon all who come near to them. And when they go into the ocean and refresh themselves and come out again, that sprinkling spreads ever afresh, and each time it becomes more powerful and spreads further and reaches more individuals. So how then can the dark night of the soul be so hazardous? Because if you think you have lost all of the ability to find God, you may suddenly turn and say, there is no God. I do not believe there can be anything beyond. You lose belief in what cannot be seen. The dark night of the soul can be very, very trying. What do you think was the great struggle for Nietzsche? What do you think drove him into madness when he saw suddenly the meaninglessness of life? What that was the letting go, that one next step of possessing it all, he was unable to take, and being unable to take it, he was lost in the madness of the insanity of the dark night of the soul, because he was not forewarned. He did not have a proper teacher. He was not the disciple of a rabbi or a Gurudeva. No, no, he had no one to ask for help. He had no one to whom he could turn and say, Gurudeva ji, help me, show me. And because he had nothing but his own self-dependence and nowhere to turn, all he could see was the uselessness of life. And because he had no religious base of any kind, for those who have a religious base, they are safe. It does not matter that the religion may be Judaism or Islam or Christianity or Hinduism. You may be a Sikh, or you may be even a member of an ancient faith. But if you have a faith, then you have something to use as an anchor to get you through that dark night of the soul. For let us take Mother Teresa as an example. She died still in that state, but functioning and moving onward, and her being was able then to fully move into the light. Why? Because she had something to hold on to, something she thought was bigger than herself, the idea and concept of love and of service. This allowed her to suffer the dark night of the soul, even though she had no proper teacher to tell her how to move beyond it, nor one to simply lay their hands upon her and move her beyond it. She was still able to cling, but Nietzsche did not have this. And it is true that many who seek enlightenment seek on these individual paths, and these individual paths, if they are grounded in something, they can be accomplishable. But if you take a path and that path is devoid of a belief in a divinity, and that path is also devoid of a structure that allows you to have a teacher that knows how to move you beyond the dark night of the soul, then how will you move? Now, let it be said clearly that this is not depression. Depression comes from a chemical imbalance in the physical being. Depression is a real illness. But that which we are calling the dark night of the soul, or the emptiness of the soul, is not an illness. It is a state of consciousness. It is a presence of being where you have detached yourself from the possessions of this world, but you have not yet realized that in detaching yourself, you have all. And in that detachment, you have also detached yourself from the meaningfulness of the world without yet having realized that since all is one, the meaning is even greater and more rewarding. For this is just that step away from being fully awake. Oh, today people speak of being woke, but woke in the spiritual sense is something so marvelous, for it is not some little earthly something that means you have gone beyond a few prejudices. It is the complete awareness of divinity when the soul opens and is flooded with the divine flowing through you and out of you and into all that is around you. But the divine isn't leaving you when it flows out of you, for it is also flowing into you. Everything you touch is divine. Everything you see is divine. Suddenly you are experiencing a whole new world, and it is your world. And that is the reward for being willing to step up to the dark night of the soul, for being willing to look at your own self, for being willing to look at the demons within, the monster within. But you say, how long will this take? It need but take an instant. Why do so many have this for so long? Because they simply do not know to take the next step. For the dark night of the soul, that which we will call the emptiness, the void in which you stand, looks to be eternal in every direction. And one reach, one step, one movement in any direction takes you beyond it. The important thing is to know this so you can move forward. Many will flee backward. and an unfortunate few may stay put. But if you stay put, then it is important to be fully anchored. So we encourage you then, do not be discouraged, but understand why so many people meditate, and get to the point where they begin to detach from things. And at that point, they say, enough has been achieved, and they leave and return to that which they would do beforehand, because this is as far as they are willing to go. They will go. They will go there in this life or in a life to come. There is no choice. So how long will it last? It may last for a lifetime. It may last for the blink of an eye. For it lasts only until you step beyond it. But if you keep coming up to it and turning back, you'll never quite enter it, and you will definitely never achieve that mystical union, that enlightenment that you desire. This is what so many teachers won't tell you. This is what so many gurus keep to themselves. Even the rabbinical teachers of the Kabbalah, the few that know this, seldom share it. But share it, anyone that has this truth may, and with but a touch of their finger, they move you beyond it if you were willing to enter into it. This then is the easy and simple thing. Know that if you enter that veil, if you enter that mist, it is but just a breath away, a thought away, a grasp away from your full enlightenment. You may proceed as you will.
We have questions here. And the one question that just came in is from Lisa in Florida. And she asks, it is said by some that we are who we are because of all that we have experienced, especially through trying times. These hardships have brought us enlightenment, and therefore we should embrace them and be thankful for them. It is also said that the dark night of the soul is the space between who you were and who you will become. You will have to completely let go of your old self to embrace a more enlightened self. When you abandon your old self, you will enter the darkness where the old you will be stripped away and the new you will be constructed. How can these two views be reconciled?
You are looking at the whole idea of two different things. And it is not because these views need to be reconciled, but because the writings on what is called the dark night of the soul are very esoteric and complex, and they may be understood on various levels. But being understood on various levels means that some people really will not have a true grasp of what the dark night of the soul is. So Some people will simply think, oh, every little trial and hardship is a dark night of a soul. It isn't. Everyone has trials within life. Everyone has sadness and everyone has happiness. Things happen in life. But when you actually sit down and meditate or ruminate, if you wish to do as Nietzsche did, when you sit down and meditate, you are there doing something different. You are entering into a different state of awareness, a different presence of being. You are letting go of the self. Now, this approach is more like that of what your second description was, which actually is the dark night of the soul. Notice that we said already that depression, which is a physical reality, is a physical ailment caused by physiological changes in the being, by chemical imbalances within the being, is not the dark night of the soul. That is certainly a very trying experience. If your best friend dies or your spouse dies, you may be terribly sad, you may be distraught, you may suffer great agony, even the chemical balance in your body could change and you may be thrown into depression, but it is not the dark night of the soul. It is depression, it is sadness, it is things other than the dark night of the soul, because at this point you haven't let go and said, oh, what is the use of life? Only if it comes to the point where you say, ah, life is of no consequence, no understanding. I do not see the value, the worth, the essence of it. That is, then when people sometimes become suicidal, this is the negative aspect of the dark night of the soul. It can be on the edge of depression, or it can be on the edge of a severe sadness. But in and of itself, it is not the dark night of the soul. It is simply edging to it when you see all of a sudden that you are willing to let go of everything, but you have not seen the full picture. So we would not generally say to you, this is a dark night of the soul. We would say to you, this is a human being in agony. So now you are looking at different things. And how do you reconcile them? You reconcile them by understanding that the dark night of the soul is not simply being tried and tested by earthly things. It is when you suddenly realize that you possess nothing and that nothing has a value. But that is when everything has the potential to be yours, and everything has the potential to be extremely valuable. That is the true dark night of the soul. And it is not something that you can just reconcile with these other trivials, because they're not even close to the same thing. But what happens is people who have great mental agility, they think they will juggle things, and they will think through things, and they will think of philosophy and religion and theology, and they will roll these over in their mind. And they will come up with concepts and understandings of something that they have no experience in. For the dark night of the soul is experiential. Enlightenment is experiential. And simply being mentally adept does not give these people a way to even see that which they have not experienced. So they tell you many words, and they roll over things, and they have comparisons, and they say, oh, this hardship in life and that hardship in life, these things put such a burden on the being, and it is a dark night for the soul. No, that is life. That is being born into Malkuth, the physical. And that is all it is. You may proceed as you will.
You use the word ego. Now, ego can be our normal ego, but there is another meaning to ego, the spiritual ego. Could you please give the difference between ego with a small e and ego with a capital E?
Here you are grasping at gnats and swallowing camels. For what happens is some speak of the ego, and when they speak of it, they use it saying it is that part of the self, the me, the consciousness of me. But when they say that, what they mean is the ego is their personal thoughts, their personal essence of being that drives them within the physical life that you know. So it is basically just the mind that is attached to this body and the action that is here. But other people use the term ego, and they use it to mean something more in a spiritual sense. What is that? That is the essence, the consciousness of the full being. Thus, the ego is the essence of the being, life upon life upon life. The essence of the being, the consciousness of the being, that which you might call almost the oversoul. Why do we say almost the oversoul? For we are speaking not just of the essence of the oversoul, but of the consciousness that actually moves through that oversoul as the ego with capital E. You may proceed as you will.
I have started or tried to start this inner work of facing these things and finding out who I really am. As I know there is much to learn that I do not know. So they say most of this work I do through, guided meditations, and I do meditate. At least I try to. I think, and then I see these things. But what I want to know is what exactly is and how do you go within? I don't understand this.
First, you must realize that when people speak of going within. What they are often truly saying to you is to close out the external distractions so that you are experiencing that which is within your own consciousness, your own essence, your own being. Now, you speak of trying to do this, but understand people spend years trying to do, because trying is different from doing. And it really is as simple as doing. But the big thing is, when you try, that implies that you are not really ready to accept what you find, what you see yourself within. The moment you are willing to accept yourself for who and what you are, to love yourself for your warts and your pimples, your sexuality or lack of sexuality, your height or your shortness, your skinniness or your fatness, your unpleasantness and your goodness, your wrinkles and your bald head or your afro. The moment you're willing to accept all of those things, whether you look like a little green Martian or Santa Claus, whether you seem to be jovial and perhaps a character similar to Jerry Lewis, or whether you seem to be stern as Moses coming down from the mount, it matters not. When you can simply look at all of this and accept it and simply say, it is, I am, then it is. It's simply that simple step that allows you to go from trying to doing. See, people don't want to think that with all of this, they can still be divine. And yet the divine flows through each individual. This is why when you look at all the arhats, you see that there are stern ones, and you see that there are jovial and jolly ones. You see there are happy ones and sad ones, and each teaching something for the individuals that would learn from them. And when you look at the saints, you see the same thing. So what is it then when you look out and you see? It does not matter what you are, who you are. It simply matters that you accept your own divinity and move onward. And from there, each person can live a life of love and be aware of all of their foibles, be aware of all of their idiosyncrasies, and simply love themselves and all other people. It is truly that simple, but it becomes complicated because people try too hard. And in trying so hard, They actually are unable to do that which is natural. It's like throwing a baseball. You take that in your hand and you think about it, and you think about it too much, and you bring your arm back and you tense your arm and you try to throw the ball and you hurt your arm and the ball doesn't go where you want it to go. And yet, if you simply grab that ball and toss it, it will go where it is meant to go because it is the natural thing. And so it is with these meditations. When you strive so hard, looking within, looking to see what you're supposed to see within, what will you see? Simply whoever or whatever you are. That is you. That's the essence of your being. It is not the difficult thing to see it. It is the difficult thing to accept it. It is the difficult thing to say, this is the ugly part of me, the violent temper part of me, the out of balance part of me. Thank you, divinity, for giving me this weird part of me, because it is the essence of part of what flows through me. And when you are able to do that, when you are able to let go of it all, then you find enlightenment. You may proceed as you will.
I have a question here from Jim in New Jersey. How do you know you have moved through the dark night of the soul into enlightenment? Is there a physical change in vibration, and are others aware or feel this?
When you have achieved enlightenment, when you have achieved in mystical union, others will realize it. It drips from you like honey. It is like an ocean of rivers flowing from you and bursting from your being and flooding everyone around you. But the dark night is not so. When you experience that, others may not even realize that you are in this place. Very few people realized that Mother Teresa was in the dark night when she was. And many did not realize that St. John of the Cross was in the dark night when he was. Few, if any, realized what St. Francis suffered when he was in the dark night. That is the way it often is. Now, as to vibrations, understand, now you're talking about energy. Energy. And when you are talking about energy, you are talking about the vibrational frequency of that energy. So what you're really talking about is not, oh, will somebody feel if you are enlightened, but will somebody feel if energy moves through you? Yes, they will. But because there is energy moving through you does not mean that you are enlightened. There are plenty of people who have not achieved enlightenment, and great energy flows through them. And there are plenty of people who have achieved enlightenment and have powerful energy flowing through them, but you don't feel it, because all you notice is the presence of this all-engulfing love. So it may not be as simple as saying, oh, you feel the energy. For you may be feeling the energy of a real rogue. You may proceed as you will.
Thank you so much for everything, Daniel, and you've done for Daniel Clay. The question I have has to do with what happens after you're enlightened, after you go through the dark night of the soul.
Any person who achieves enlightenment will go through the dark night of the soul, but it does not have to be a long experience. It can be an instantaneous experience. The realization, the simple realization that you possess nothing and that nothing has value can be instantaneous. And if you instantaneously then go to possessing all things and all things being divine and flowing, that dark night of the soul would be just a fleeting thought, but it will be there if you are to achieve enlightenment. But you may not even realize you have experienced it if you simply let go and let be. Many people are unable to do that. And in extreme cases, such as Nietzsche, they roll this over within themselves until it can drive them totally mad. But when you're saying, does it have to be experienced? It has to occur. It doesn't actually have to be experienced, for it can simply be a moment of recognition. You may proceed as you will.
Barbara, has this been answered fully? You also had a question, what happens after you have attained enlightenment? Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
Daniel Clay?
That becomes a little more of a question of what you desire and what your willingness is with the rest of humanity needing help. For when you attain enlightenment, you can use this life, what is left of it, to help others, and then proceed into the light. Or you can simply say to yourself, I have achieved what I would for this life, and leave it and enter into the light. Or you could work until you would leave this life, but then choose not to enter into the light, but stand without of the light, that you might bring others into the light. This is that which the Dalai Lama had promised to do for all of those souls that were traveling with him. This is that which Padre Pio had suggested that he would do. And then it is also possible that going fully into the light, you could choose to return again to return again to this physical realm of Malkuth. Despite the hazards, despite the dangers to the self, because anyone who dares to enter into Malkuth has the potential to lose that which they have achieved. But you can choose to return to Malkuth and do as the Buddha or the Christ and bring others to the divine. These individuals are much more rare than those who simply wait outside of divinity, or should we say light, for they have already fully realized their divinity. But they also have a hazard to themselves, but they have less to lose. So what you're really looking to see is, what will you do? You are looking to see what others would do, and then make a comparison and say, what should you as an individual do? What do you want to do? Do you want to be a bright, shining star? Do you want to pull others upward? Is it worth the risk? We say by all means it is. Will you come back? Some have been back many times. At some point, each must choose to make an end to returning. So what do you do afterwards? It is not a simple, oh, poof, you will be on a cloud plucking a heart. And it is not a simple, oh, you have achieved everything here and you will go dwell in another celestial realm. It is, oh, you are a divine being. You have a choice, and then you will have to make it. And you will continue to live. So life doesn't cease just because the body ceases. And your consciousness doesn't cease just because the body ceases. You know that from past life studies, that life continues to exist. And so it is when you achieve enlightenment. Likewise, life still continues to exist, and all that was you still is you, and more. You may proceed as you will.
You've given me a lot of information. The next question is, and you touched on it briefly, that after going through the dark night of the soul and the enlightenment, then there's a decision point. How best to approach the decision?
This is something that is very individual. It is not simply that we would tell you this is how you make the decision or this is what you would do. This is one of those things, just like every decision that you would make in life. You're walking down the street. There's a coffee shop on your right and an ice cream shop on your left. And you look up and it looks like it's going to rain. Do you go to the coffee shop or the ice cream shop? And somebody will say, why should I go to either? I'm going to run to my parked car. It is truly, truly a free choice. All you need to know is that The world has been as it is as it is, and will be as it is, because souls are continually incarnating. And as souls evolve out of this realm, new souls are coming in and evolving. That is why some people think that everything is so hopeless. Oh, will mankind ever change? We would tell you mankind is changing. Much of humanity has moved on, but they are no longer the ones in this schoolroom that we call Earth. So the choice to you then is, will you help people through this schoolroom by being a part of it again? Will you help people through this schoolroom from the beyond by staying out of the light? Will you go into the light, take a respite, and return to bring others out of this schoolroom? Or will you move onward and never look back? And you can do each of these with a heart full of love and compassion. So the choice is simply yours to make. And you can make that choice now. And if you make that choice and proclaim it, well, that is a decision that you will hold to, because such a choice is a soul level choice. And once you make such a choice, there is no turning back. You may proceed as you will.
Does the dark night of the soul present any dangers to bipolar meditators?
The short answer is no, not any danger beyond what already exists. The manic depressive swings are a result of a chemical imbalance. If this is being properly treated, the realization that is made by the dark night of soul is simply that, a realization. It will have no more impact on them than it would any other person. But the bipolar issues are perhaps, to the physical being, to the physical life, more of a danger and concern, and of greater importance to get help and overcome. Because this is actually a medical issue. And what you are asking is equivalent to asking, is it more dangerous to be diabetic or to experience a spiritual awareness of an emptiness of life? Well, to your physical being, it is a lot more dangerous to be diabetic. You may proceed as you will.
Is it possible to achieve enlightenment or mystical union without experiencing the dark night of the soul?
This question is one that we have already addressed. It may be experienced so briefly you really don't even realize it, but it will be experienced. We leave each of you with blessings and with peace. Peace be with you.